going?
I think we have, I've managed to successfully sign into Zoom, so
Oh, nice job. Okay, well, we call it a day.
although I have to go into the browser because the app needs an update. And since I'm not an admin, the chances of me successfully installing that update
On your
are,
computer?
yeah.
Yeah.
So was it sent to this,
That is funny.
our group as a Zoom for everyone?
What's that?
So is the Zoom link, was it sent to all of us?
It was not. I asked for it because then I'll share the draft RFP.
Yep. I was just wondering, are you doing that so we can see it?
Yes,
Oh, okay, because if we had the Zoom link, then we could see it.
yep. Well, but you can get right into the document through Google Docs anyway. But yes, we could, we certainly can.
Well, if we were actively using Google Docs.
You're right.
Busy for summer though.
You know,
Isn't summer a great time to have some downtime? Our grandson's staying with us for 2 weeks, which is fun. He lives in town and he's 15. And he goes back and forth and feeds his cat, but he's mostly with us. Last night after dinner, I was doing some stuff in the house and then I got done with that about 8:30 and he was fishing and Chicken and I were just sitting outside reading our books. And it was a light breeze. And it was just so pretty. Yeah. Just, not too hot, not humid. Yeah, but we've been really having fun with it. And he's 6'3", 220 pounds. I mean, he's big. And you can imagine how much he eats. And he tries to be so polite. He eats more than chicken meat can eat.
oh, yeah.
So it always, we had tacos. Yeah. We had tacos, and he said, "Yeah, I usually have 6." He said, "Yeah, I'll start with 2. Make sure there's enough for everybody."
Well, that's awesome. I don't know about that farm. So, does he go, so if he's 15, then
He's at the high school.
But it was the exact same concept.
Yeah, he's going in.
But it's cool.
He has autism. And
So close to.
he's,
I'd almost like rather, I know, I wasn't starting to
he has,
realize that, but
he's in the special ed program,
yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
in regular classes, but
Well,
sometimes there's
it's not
engagement.
in the normal.
And then he has a resource room that he goes to every day. And has a special ed.
It is.
That
And
can help
honestly
him
though,
with stuff.
I mean, the
Yeah,
problem looks
he's
good.
still trying. I don't think he's maximizing the resources available to him. Because he just, it's like, but he did. He needed more help than he
Yeah,
never
and the only
got.
people I've noticed are
He just loves
Yeah,
to.
so-
He's always ready to go,
Nice.
even though he may not have all the exercise.
yeah. I thought it was
Hey, he's a tiger. Nice.
we talked about
That's cool.
and you mentioned that it was
So what are we doing here, I guess?
tentative and
Doing some,
Now we have the expert.
yeah,
I think it's.
right.
I
Yeah.
think it floats fine. But yeah, I was kind of with the
I'm not sure.
oh, Fruitiger. Fruitiger.
Well, I think I also looked
It feels like they have these leader meetings we were gonna do,
Oh,
and I have not scheduled any of them.
but at least it's close enough.
Okay.
Rob sent an email with a link to this. And I copied this from the thing, and then when I went back to the shared drive, I didn't double check it. But I wanted to check with you, because you had signed up to meet with Rich. You also commented last meeting that opinion of yourself may be what you would prefer. I had signed up to this, but I don't need you know, what we had said last time was if there was a second person, the person, the board member wanted to schedule the meeting, that I don't have to go with you. I want it to be the preference.
I mean, I don't even, my thing is that
We don't, yeah.
I just feel like when I look at you retired, that's kind of, I think you're in right now,
Yeah.
could help walk out. So my, that's what I think different. So when I look at some of them, from my perspective, to try to maximize the efficiency of all of these meetings versus, trying to rub up, I guess. So, but I'm always open for something new. But if you can go, then I can bow out.
No. And you signed up for this, I think you're interested in it. Schedule it, let me know, and if I'm free, I'm happy to join you. And then if something comes up for you schedule-wise, know that I could take it. And that way you wouldn't have to cancel.
Well, I was looking at this because I was trying to figure out, I was like, okay, now I need to go see who would sign up for it and all that. So I need to, yeah, I'll have to find that. Where that's at, it's gotta be, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I'm not sure it is, where the Brandon guidelines were initially for this. Like I said, Bob could send a link to this, but unless you can find
So, good morning to anybody who might be online. This is a work meeting for the Kosciuszko County Parks Board. We're starting a little late as we wanted to make sure we had sharing set up for my screen. We're going to look at the actual draft of the RFP. So that is in fact on the screen. My mouse hates the glass surface of the table. So everybody feel free to jump in. If you're not familiar with Google Docs, those of us who have access can simply jump in and edit as we go. So here on the first page, I have, at this point in time, left all the dates empty for us to change as we're confident we know what they are. Did obviously include our draft logo on the top of it, which I think looks very nice at the top of it. The contact information for this pursuant to the county procurement policy will be Marcia McSherry. She is the county purchasing agent pursuant to the ordinance that was passed in this particular place, and I'll make sure that that's all the information that she wants on there. The table of contents has not been corrected from the draft that I use, and the numbering throughout the document is not correct at this point in time. I will let you know. I will certainly fix that. That's just drudgery. I think once we get down to the project introduction is where it starts. I want everybody to look at, and we certainly don't have to make final approvals today, but get on the same page in terms of what we want. So I have added a project overview. One of the difficulties I had as I was putting together the draft is almost every plan I saw that I was able to use as a model was only a trails plan. It wasn't a Blue Ways and a trails plan. So as you look through this, please feel free to jump in and say, no, we ought to put something about Blue Ways in this particular spot. You'll see at the bottom of this section, I said for ease of reading, trail refers to both blue and green ways. Sort of a cheap way out of saying it covers everything. But I did put a section in here talking about both the blue ways and the green ways, sort of starting to drive home the concept that we really expect this to be both of those.
Do you want input as we go?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, thank you for the reminder.
So-
Are you to that place that's highlighted right now, or are you past the first paragraph?
Let's see if I can get it even bigger here.
Okay. I thought the first paragraph looked great. My comment on the second paragraph is I'm not sure that we're interested in boating.
You know, and I almost took that out initially.
You know, what we've talked about has always been non-motorized, and boating implies,
Yeah,
yeah,
Connotation.
okay.
easy peasy.
I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Yeah.
Can't we get jet boats going up the Tippy River? I'm just
Probably.
kidding.
You could try.
Yeah. Like
Wait.
the ones on the Grand
Can we
Canyon.
wake surf on that?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
So certainly we can change any of that. That is obviously just the overview. Explanation of parties involved. This is a section that was in the other document. Theirs was much more involved because the original draft had multiple cities involved and outlined each of those. But I did want to indicate here as well, obviously Kosciuszko County is the purchasing agent for this, who we are. But I also wanted to mention the steering committee so that they're well aware that there is a larger group of people that we can call upon to assist us. I'm not sure the wording of that is spectacular. But again, everybody has access to this. We can go in and edit it before we put it out for final approval.
Yeah. Okay.
Project background. Here I talked obviously about the Forward Kosciuszko. I didn't hyperlink, but I will eventually hyperlink the Forward Kosciuszko. And as well, I linked to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. We certainly, I think, want the vendor to be looking at funding requirements as we go, and so they should be aware that these are some of the things that we're looking to build to. Link to our master plan. So again, jump in. I put a section in about the bid process. I did store the county procurement policy inside the folder for the RFP. So if you want to actually look at the bid process, there is a particular section that deals with bids between $50,000 and $150,000. That appears to be where we think we're going to fall. So that would probably be the process that Marcia wants us to use. There is a more involved process for bids over $150,000. And obviously, if the county comes back and says, no, we want you to use that one, then we would change the wording here and appropriate to reflect that. It is certainly possible that the county attorney who will review this at Ormsby may come back and say, I want the plan, I want the procurement policy spelled out in this document, in which case we would certainly do that as well. My intention was to leave some of that legalese out and simply hyperlink to it and say that it's included by reference, so. Any place you see a highlighted is something I didn't know the answer to, or I saw that there were inconsistencies. Since I have cut and pasted from 3 or 4 different documents, one of the things I still have to do is make sure all the names are consistent throughout the document. Some of it talks about the proponent, some of it talks about the bidder. I'll get all those cleaned up as long as we've got all the other wording straight. That's not a big deal. See a typo
Going
right there.
back to, hold on, let me make sure I might have, okay. Sorry, I might have jumped to the next section already, scope of work, so
Okay,
I'll wait.
need to add that link there.
So is this the RFP for the master trail plan, or? are we working
Yes,
on-
this
okay.
is the master trail plan. Quite honestly, I haven't even looked at Chenworth yet. This has taken a ton more time than I expected. Next section was scope of work. I think this is super critical for us to talk about and make sure this is what we want. Again, this is one that I scavenged from someplace else.
This might be a good one to create a little more differentiation between trails and blueways, just
I
as I'm
agree.
reading it. Just because there's land use reference, right? It could just make someone just think about that. So the question I was going to bring up as I was looking at this, and I don't know if it's within the scope of this, but we keep hearing and getting the feedback about the Tippy River doesn't need to change its designation to a navigable. And I don't know if that is something that is within the scope of this document to understand what it would take to do that and what benefits it would give us if this is one of our Blue Wave plans, and if so, should we call that out?
And I heard a year ago that was like important, and then I've heard since it really doesn't make a difference. And I found the list of all of the navigable rivers in the state, and the Eel River was on that list. And on that same list, it said that Lake Tippy is non-navigable. I had no
Okay.
idea what that meant.
So, I mean,
So what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
I don't know, I had heard that was important, and then I've gotten other information.
so to me, the output of the plan would be to maybe create an awareness of whether that's important or not, right?
Perfect. I like that
So,
idea.
Yeah, because I think, again, I don't know enough about it, so I think that, again, if that's the output of the plan, that's great. I think where it becomes important is, you cannot step foot out of your kayak if it's non-navigable or boat, either, but definitely on the shoreline or potentially even in the water itself. And so, again, I want to understand what exactly that rule is, because if we want to have a blue way that's open to others and there's things to portage around and all that, we don't want to necessarily, be encouraging, or we don't want to put people in a position of technically trespassing and such.
Right.
So,
And I think that's a really great point, Mike. And one of the ways that we can maybe belay any concerns from property owners would be to qualify that from a purpose of maintenance. Because as we further these ideas, we certainly want to be able to have, navigable blueways. And right now, some of our blueways require some good old-fashioned TLC, access to the land and removing debris so that folks can take advantage of those. So I love the idea of understanding that, but from a perspective of maintenance.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
And I don't know that having something be designated as navigable has anything to do with it being navigable. I think it has to do with the landowner for that section of river doesn't own the water, but owns the land. So it's like Mike was saying, if you're in a kayak, you can't just sit on the bank there. And there may even be some question if you can step out of your kayak in the middle of the waterway.
Yeah. An example, I think, going from the Tippy River, the Tippy Lake into the Tippy River, especially if it's not navigable, right? There's a dam there. So if someone was truly kayaking from the lake onto the river and they portaged around that dam, they're going to be on someone's seawall at worst, right? And in their yard at best, or maybe I got that backwards, you know. So anyway, I would love to get a clarification on the importance of that
Yeah.
for using that as a blue way.
Will that help with our decision-making too, as far as like where we put launch sites?
Yeah, that's
and-
true.
So I
But
added paragraph C. Why doesn't everybody take a look at that? It's definitely a first swipe at this. I think we all agree this needs to be done. It's just gonna be a matter of how we word it.
I think that when we're using these terms comprehensive, and I think it's maybe bigger than what it needs to be.
I don't know if we need to look at every single lake and stream in the county versus.
Yeah. And we're only looking at potentially, 100,000 or less than 150,000. I don't want this to become
Yeah.
a bigger project than maybe what's needed. No, and I also want to go back to Troy's good point that, what we want to do is create more blue trails. And our conversation hasn't been about blue trails on lakes. It's been about blue trails on rivers and streams with an emphasis on the Tippy River in large part because of the waterways in our county, from what I've heard from experts. I'm the newcomer. The place that has the endangered species, that has the most critical area, is the Tippy River and it's between Lake Oswego and Chinworth Bridge. That's where there's the most critical areas, and some of the most natural areas too. So we have over 100 lakes. I don't want there to be a comprehensive study of all of them. I don't think that's what we need. And I think our lakes, for the most part, have public access already, especially the larger ones. There's at least, it's somewhere between 18 and 20 DNR public access points in the county. There's just not any right along the Tippecanoe River until you get further downstream from
There's one in
Chinworth.
Chinworth.
So it's something more like this.
Is it a federal designation or a state? I mean,
It's largely a federal designation. It can make a huge difference for the EPA and what they're allowed to control in an area when they determine that it's navigable. The feds have a lot more control over it.
And should it just be federal and or state? Are we missing any potential state ones?
I understand
I don't know.
to get
I don't
it
know.
designated, it takes state action. I thought, but yeah, again, we may want to, we can find out. Kim, do you know?
Okay.
And rather than could be, could it be, could not be? Because then it's kind of, exclusive, like you couldn't, you're all good except for this body of water. I guess determining those that could
I'm sorry?
not be developed into a blue way.
I'm sorry? We don't know at this point in time. That's part of why we need this. It absolutely is a consideration going forward. It may certainly determine which projects we bring to you first. Is the ones that we can get funding for are probably going to be higher priority. Yeah.
I want to circle back to something that Troy said earlier, and it's the importance of having a river trail or blueway that you can actually use because it's not so full of trees, trunks, et cetera, that you can't get through it.
Right.
So that thinking about the maintenance of an area makes sense maybe for this master plan.
So if we scroll down to line G, you'll see at the end of it, in considerations for maintenance and sustainability. So I think that's something that we need to make sure when we do our pre-bid meeting, that we inform the vendors that that's one of the things that we're looking at. Now, I can tell you from Cherry Creek and the mountain bike trails, it's hard to gauge what the maintenance is going to be because you just simply don't know what trees are going to fall and where they're going to fall and the impact.
And that still may need to be handled by a Friends of the Tippy River or the, you know, the current organizations
Yeah.
that exist.
Yeah.
You know, similarly, KCV manages the mountain bike trails, right, for the owner
Right.
and to keep them open. So it's, you know, an association with a not-profit to do
Yeah.
so, and that might be our solution here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really have been thinking about the Friends of the County Park, whatever that looks like, but frankly, I think we need a product before we really can.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least the vision of the coming product, right?
Right.
It's, the,
Right.
you know,
Which again, this would significantly help with,
Yeah.
so. So is C looking better to you? Is that more what you were thinking at this point?
The county streams, so that is like, could be many, and we're not really interested in most, correct?
But the one thing that I think that I heard Carrie say was make sure you don't limit it just to the Tippy River. We want them, they may come back and say, hey, you didn't think about X. And if we put in Tippy River, that's probably all they're gonna do. So
Yeah.
I'm only one vote. But I think if we leave it open and they come in and say, yeah, we looked at these, 90% of these, it's clear aren't useful to us at all. That's what we're asking them
Yeah.
to do. And then if somebody comes in and says, why didn't you do something down on this? Well, that was eliminated by the vendor as not being feasible for us.
Yeah. I mean, I could go for this the way that it is, but this could generate a large list of information. And again, I would advocate for that we say that could not be developed into a blue way. So then you're going to resolve a more manageable dialogue, if you will.
How
So
would you want to word that then, Troy?
then those that could not be, so where it says those that could be, just include the word not. There you go.
But it didn't need to be something like,
Well, you could focus on those that could not be, because then you would have an understanding of why they could not be, and then the rest would be okay. So we're not focusing to eliminate those, we're focusing on,
but it's not only, we want them to find the ones, and then we want them to do all these things like determine maintenance and make recommendations for building the mountainous trails. So we need that second step as well,
okay.
is my thought.
No, I think we want the focus on those that can be,
Okay.
that can become a blue way.
We could say, hold on, let's go back. We could do something like this. Maybe we could make it 2 parts.
And maybe, yeah, anyway, there's,
And,
Does that cover it, Troy?
Yeah, I think that there's value if we come up against one that's not, I guess, eligible. I think us understanding why that would be really important.
There's a whole lot of streams that don't have sufficient flow
Right.
for kayaks and canoes.
Well, let's, we're not going to approve this formally today.
Right.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time on that, which is critical. I said that was a real weakness in what I'd done so far. But let's keep moving on, understanding that probably is still going to be edited. I'm going to leave it highlighted as a focus point for us. Down in E, I specifically listed that they need to look at funding requirements such as NDOT and the DNR. I think it's super critical for us.
Yes.
As they develop design guidelines, we know DNR is going to require ADA accessibility. I know NDOT has a trail building methodology you have to follow, so we want our guidelines to have those built in.
The one above that on public input, I guess,
So this,
I guess we want them to review the public input already gathered, but then we want them to also go further.
okay, how would you, what else would you say then?
Well, I guess maybe it's even earlier is to review the forward Kosciuszko, what's in the master plan, make sure that the consultants have absorbed all of that. When I look at that public input, and we just realize what we've been through and how time-consuming that can be, it's important, but I want to make sure, do we want the public input once they're to the point of recommendations, or do we want the public input early on
There's
to
some stuff on that
gather?
later on in here.
So it's some of both.
Keep your eye on that. We'll
So
circle
you're
back
saying,
and see it.
you're
Yeah.
saying both?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
There's a proposed, there is a list of things that we expect them to do that they're supposed to put in start and stop dates, and there's some public input lines on those. So
Okay.
when we get to that,
Okay.
see if that satisfies
So it'll
what you're
be
looking
2
for.
points.
Let's look at F. There's a proposed trail network plan that connects key destinations such as parks, residential areas, and commercial. Should we say intentionality about the connected to existing trails here, or existing trails?
Yeah, I think it's utilizing existing trail infrastructure. Where possible. And I think the other element that needs to be in this section, whether it could go into this a little bit, is a lot of our vision and, and mission is about being environmental stewards. Do we want to mention a couple things, connecting natural areas? And the other piece of, is there a piece of this of understanding wetlands or other natural areas, right? Because it's one thing to just say, yeah, we'll throw a trail through this section,
Right.
but do we need to understand some of the environmental impact?
Yeah, and I
So
think
is
that
this sufficient, or do you want to bump that up even more,
Which one?
up in B?
Yeah. Natural, yeah, that's good. And then,
I think I would like to call out in the, maybe then in the F, connecting natural areas or something like that.
yeah, because there's a lot of areas that aren't parks, but are the kinds of areas we want to connect
Right.
to.
Right. So in F, I've added now at the end, using existing trails when possible.
Okay,
Maybe linking's a better term.
Lincoln to,
existing, yep.
That's good.
It could, linking to existing trails and natural areas when possible.
Yeah. I just think it's important to call that out.
This Portugal Grove St. Philip's, one that was in our,
Yep.
this is a great resource right here.
So that has been, I started with MACOG's, and then I've grabbed a lot of theirs.
Okay.
And really edited from this, the Portugal one. I like that
Gotcha.
one a lot.
Yeah.
That's the one I said that I found that was really
Yeah.
trail specific.
Yeah, they've got some really great language in there too, so it's very, very good. All right, so is this, we're in scope, is that what we're in? Okay.
The next section was mandatory professional requirements. This is what we expect the vendor to bring to the table.
Couldn't be wrong.
Okay. And again, we can come back to anything. I think this section 5 is probably going to need to be removed, quite honestly. I think that was just something I cut and pasted that doesn't make sense anymore, so. Response content is pretty critical. This is what we expect to get back from the vendor. And I think this might actually be, I might have stole it from here.
Yeah, there's, I think it's, or actually, here's your one pagers and stuff.
Yeah.
This is,
Well, but in any case, there are multiple ways of doing this. The way I've done it is not necessarily the end-all, be-all. We could do it as an attachment to the end, or we can do it this way.
there it is.
If you've ever done one of these, you certainly want them to do it in a format you expect to see, so you aren't trying to figure out what the heck they're telling you with 8 different proposals.
And that looks like it's pretty much verbatim, so that's good.
You will find that good attorneys are also good thieves of other people's words and documents.
It's been tested.
And we're very thankful.
Ryan, why do that? Why do that at all?
Should we be sending this through ChatGPT then?
I have, Matt knows this, I've used ChatGPT for some of this, especially when it came to Blue Ways. I couldn't find anything on Blue Ways, so I told it to develop me a Blue Way.
It works. It gives you a baseline at
Yeah,
least to work
it's a
off of.
tool. It's like a screwdriver. I used a screwdriver. It gave me an answer that was helpful to me.
Oh, good.
I've seen you use a screwdriver like a chisel, though.
They are.
I read it. It's pretty good too, what it gave you.
When something goes wrong, all you need is a bigger hammer.
Exactly.
So we're asking for an executive summary, pretty basic. Here's where I talked about it. This one says proponents. We're going to change that wording to something consistent throughout it, probably better. Here's where Aggie, they need to come back in and say that they demonstrate a clear understanding of our work plan, our management plan.
Okay.
I'm not sure that language is exactly the same as above. I'll clean all that up, but yes, they need to explain to us that they understand what we're trying to achieve and where we're going with it. See here, now we start going into the delivery schedule. There is an attachment to this that talks about that. We'll get down to. There's some deadlines and stuff here, and I'll work with Marcia to make sure that we're all on board with that kind of stuff. We're requiring 3 reference projects. See here, it says 5 years. There was another place that said 10 years. Again, those are just cut and paste issues. I'll clean all that kind of stuff up. Last time they did a master plan. I think 10 years is the way to go.
Welcome.
Morning, Craig. Yeah, I may work on this. I really, the reference projects I think are pretty critical for us. I really want to see what they've done in other ones. You know, I've thought about, do we want something in there? We would like to see hyperlinks to any pages that exist for this project, that kind of stuff. I think it'd be pretty cool. you know, if we get a vendor and he's done some close projects and he thinks they're cool, I'm certainly not above taking a day trip and going out and writing those.
Right, right.
And see what we think of, what they propose. Now, what they propose may not be what the agency actually built, but
Yeah.
asked for an org chart, names of the critical members, all pretty standard RFP type requests. If anybody looks at that and says they want anything reworded, obviously just let me know. The one thing had a schedule of rates and fees. I don't know how critical that is to this. We're expecting a fairly flat fee cost, but it would be good to know upfront if we want to ask something, if we want something else, what that's going to cost. I know council is going to give us everything we ask for. Yeah, I figured it would. Let's see, where are we at now? Schedule rates and fees. Schedule plan priorities. This one needs, definitely needs some more work. You know, one thing that is not in here that I didn't see in any of the plans to throw in here is the level of work we expect them to do in terms of how granular we want this plan to be. In terms of, we want this to be fairly feasible corridors when they're done. We're not expecting engineering studies at this point in time, but we do expect these to be viable plans. I think we need to say that someplace. I'm just not sure where it needs to be
Yeah.
or the wording at this point in time.
There was a section we spent a lot of time earlier that really sounds like that's the scope of work for the
Right? Yeah,
consultants.
yeah.
And yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, good. But it seems like it should be in there someplace. And you mentioned that there were 2 places for asking for public input, and it seems to me that this scope of work, if should include both of those, if we're wanting them to do that.
Scroll down to, that keeps popping up. So this is an evaluation sheet that was attached to one of them. You can look at all those points and see if you recommend anything different. There's some other line, okay, where is this? Project schedule template. So this would be. Frankly, I'd rather they meet with us initially. I don't know about you guys.
I think that sounds good.
They'll do a lot of the existing condition analysis, even to write their proposal.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, it's talking about an advisory committee here.
The advisor committee is us for this project.
Okay, good.
Now, if we elect to bring in the steering committee, and I think we would, we'd specifically invite them to these public meetings. Again, that's one of the things where everyone I looked at had a different wording on what they called stuff.
Yeah,
So here, I think this gets to what you're talking about, Aggie. So we have an initial meeting, talk about what we're supposed to do. They go out and do their existing condition analysis, develop a draft plan, come back, meet with us and the public again, and then they go back and do their final plan.
You know, it's always so, I don't know. I don't know if risky is the right word, but whenever you put draw a line on a map, would we want to try to be a little bit provocative here with just in the develop the plan, or maybe it's already in the document about a conceptual drawing of any of this stuff in the master plan?
So
I
they're,
mean, are
so
we
they're
ready to do
required to,
something like that?
yeah, no, that's a great, they're required to present to us a final plan.
Right. I didn't see anything in there about a drawing. That's when I was, I was wondering if we wanted to try to,
How else would they give it to us though?
They-
Just in text?
yeah,
Oh my.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice to kind of have. Yeah. Because we'll have to cross that bridge, and I think it's a really healthy time to start to build, ideas around that sort of a discussion and what it would look like. Good point, yeah.
That's not good enough.
Well, I think it's good enough for right now. Don't be too tough on yourself.
Yeah.
You've got the hardest job in the whole room right now, so.
It's really hard wordsmithing live by committee,
And we
so.
can ask them in their proposal to describe their deliverables. Because they will have a picture of what they're going to deliver based on their other experience. And so that will give us a chance to discuss it with them.
That deliverable, and I hadn't thought of that, is potentially a big deal. And I suppose it's not the point in time to be too granular, because they aren't building the trails. This is just a proposed spot for the trail.
Right.
I'm overthinking this, because when we really build the trails, that we want an exact map of everything. This is
Yeah.
just, it's more than a bright line, but it's also not GPS enabled.
But aren't we, I mean, and we might not get to that level, but we've talked about identifying 3 or 4 very actionable projects. Is it, something we can ask in this is to identify those 3 to 4 projects?
And in the scope of work, we do include, we want it to be feasible to build the trails. So consideration of things like wetlands that may make it impossible to put a trail in a certain place. They have to consider that. So, yeah, it's not an engineering study, but it would be in a fairly exact location. Okay.
Is this the point where they're going to talk to property owners during this process? Because we can have a wonderful idea and then have a property owner or owners.
I think
say,
that's something that we talk about with the vendor. And we probably tell them, you don't go out and talk to property owners until you talk to us. Because we're well aware that talking to property owners right now is not something we're really ready to do. That's a great point for that second public input where we've already sort of identified spots we think we're going to be. Right.
So in that scope of work, did you want to add another public input? I think it'd be after F.
So they have to tell us in that schedule when they're going to do those public inputs. So I don't know that we need them up in F, because we're telling them they've got to answer this as part of their proposal.
Yeah, I'm just advocating that the scope of work be as comprehensive as possible, and we don't hide stuff other places in the RFP that are part of the scope of work.
I thought there was.
That's why I brought it up again, Rob.
So they're required, they're told they're going to have to do that in D. What would you change in D?
Okay. For me, it's the order of it. So if D, they're engaging, that's before the plan's written. And then do we want them to engage the public again when there's a draft plan?
Well, tell me what wording you'd like to see.
So if there's a proposed plan in F, then do we want, after F, there to be some kind of public meetings or public input to the draft plan? So I think the earlier one, the way I read it is, it's saying, community, what do you want? And then later it's saying, we actually have a plan, a draft plan. We want you to respond to the draft plan.
But that's, if we look in this schedule, that's exactly what it says they have to do. So they
Yeah.
develop a draft plan, and then they've got to meet with us and the public. So I'm willing to change up above, but we've told them they've got to calendar this as part of their responsibility in terms of their bid. This is not right anymore either.
I put a note in there, Rob, about, let's see, I don't know if this is the time to think about it, but county streams, maybe could we put counties rivers? Because you can't be canoeing down a stream or kayaking down a stream.
How about if I put rivers/streams? Because I want to be, I agree with you. I want to be careful that we don't, by the usage of the words, limit what they're looking at.
But I don't know if some of the connections between the lakes are considered rivers. So I understand what you're saying, because we don't want to chase every small tributary, but
And drainage ditches.
Yeah.
How about,
And I mean, they're
How
like,
about-
you know,
how
so
about-
they get into this huge expense, like, oh yeah, we looked at, Cherry Creek is not something they should be looking at.
Or Deeds Creek.
so how about
Yeah,
the
Deeds
term
Creek is too
waterways
small.
is a more appropriate word?
I don't know, are we being too clever?
well, let's not I think this is good. So when we start talking to, as we talk to people, we want to
Yeah.
clarify, this isn't to look at every blue line on a map necessarily, but identify the critical ones, waterways that could be part of this plan.
These are also good points to bring up when we have the pre-RFP meeting, and just say to the vendor, what does this mean you were looking at to you? So they may come back with C and say, oh my God, that means we're gonna look at every place that water flows in the
Yeah.
county, and that's gonna cost you $100,000 for that alone, and we're gonna
Right.
go, oh, no, that's not what we want.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking in my mind too, I don't wanna blow our
Yep,
No, that's fair,
expenses
yeah.
on looking at.
That's right.
But I think it's
Yeah.
reasonable that in the pre-RFP meeting, we will look to clarify it, and there's probably language out there that would work,
right,
so.
right. And that's exactly why I said we need to do
Yeah.
a pre-RFP meeting,
Yeah.
because we simply don't know. We don't have the experience. What else was at the end? Let's jump down to the end. I'm probably going to take this, identify all persons out. That was already in that other that other place that talked about what had to be in your proposal.
Where the organization chart was.
Yeah, and there's some other stuff. This was MACOG stuff. Now, I'm not gonna remove it now. I'm telling you, that was sort of my intent. Because if you guys all go in and say, no, we like MACOG's approach better than the approach you've done, we can change it back. This instructions for complete proposals was MACOG's. I'm not planning on using that, but again, I didn't take it out at this point in time. The evaluation sheet is really sort of pretty critical for government RFPs. You know, there can be contests of the bidding, so we need to be pretty careful about voting on these. So we will, unless Marcia tells me differently and she's in charge of how this goes, we will all score the contracts. So you will do the evaluation sheet for each of the bidders. I don't know if Marcia's going to tally those up or we're going to tally those up. And then we'll take those and we'll have a board vote on the winning bid. There is an ability to not accept the numerically winning bid, but it becomes difficult. You really have to have your ducks in a row when you do something like that, but we can talk about that as we get closer. So if you look at this and you want to change some of this language, that's certainly fine with me.
Should we highlight it? I mean, if we're going in to make changes, we better.
If you do, yes, highlight it, make a note. Let's make sure
Yeah.
we've made changes. I've been making the changes without highlighting the stuff we've all talked about today, but yeah. And I don't know if Google has a track changes like Word does or not. I've never gone that deep into it.
It might have comments on the
You
side,
can
I'm not
definitely
sure.
comment or highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything more on this criteria? Under time frame? If you just page down, okay, there was more, okay,
No, this is just a place for notes.
okay.
Needs to be a page break there.
I just wondered if there was a chance to put in anything that related to the interview with them.
You can factor that in as you look at evaluation of the firm's personal equipment to perform, or years of service, or knowledge of, this is not really, this needs to be, may not be exactly what we want there.
Guys, I've got to take off.
Okay, thanks for coming. So,
Sorry.
how are we doing on time? Well, we're over an hour now. So with Matt having to leave, do we want to break for the day? Everybody can,
How are we feeling on this? I mean, how much more to get through?
you know, we've gone through a lot of the fluffy stuff that I really wanted us to look at initially today. I imagine everybody needs to sort of sit and think about some of this. So my hope would be that we do that and we'd come back on, well, let's talk about the 20th here in a second. When, with at least two of us gone on the 20th, I don't think we want to necessarily approve this on the 20th.
Which two are
Only one
gone?
of us is
I-
gone, only Matt.
Only Matt's gone?
Only Matt's gone.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I would hope then we could take a shot at approving this on the 20th so that we can recommend it on to council and commissioners for approval.
Yep.
I agree.
Do you want to, it sounded like there was a little bit more work you wanted to do, Rob, if you want to let us know when you've done that.
Okay. Well, at this point in time, I'll go through and I'll do all the formatting changes and get it cleaned up and what I think is a presentable form. I'll leave the highlights and stuff in for now, though.
Do we need to have the Chinworth one done by the 20th as well?
I will take a look at doing the Chinworth one as well. And I'm going to see if MACOG can send an actual construction one. Craig, could you share one of your actual construction building ones with me? One of your RFPs to actually build the trail? So when you've requested somebody to actually go out and build a length of trail, could you share one of those RFPs with me? Yeah. Because I don't have one of those. Chinworth is an actual, we want you to go out and design and build it. So it's different than this.
I don't, you're right, I haven't really done that as much with trails as I have with, well, I probably did it with the one there, across the bridge and stuff, because that was an NDOT project.
Yeah,
I'll have to see what I get on that.
okay, and I'll ask MACOG if they can send me one. I was hoping,
I do have, feasibility study, I did do a feasibility study and tried to get funding from Chinworth to Crazy Egg a few years ago. And at the same time, we did get funding, a feasibility study for, Roy Street to Eisenhower. And I
Okay.
think Warsaw has one around like, so I have 2 or 3 feasibility studies.
boy, if you could send those to me, especially the Chinworth one would be fantastic.
I'll send those all to you. K-21 funded the one to Eisenhower and I believe the one on Heritage Trail that we put in now.
Is that the one out to Stonehenge?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I do have, this may be a little bit beyond that, maybe that's part of this. The town's received a $30,000 grant from Indiana Department of Health that, actually we received a year ago last May. I got an extension on that because
Right.
I talked to them, I said, we want to use this as a little seed money for what the county wants to do and do a larger scope and kind of spread our money further. And they did give me that extension, but I can send you that paperwork too.
That'd be awesome.
See, Matt,
Thank you, Matt.
enjoy your vacation.
Yeah, another thing they did is they sent me some kind of materials related to other consultants that had done other bicycle pedestrian studies.
Oh, that'd be great, because we'll have to send this out to them. Yeah,
You know, so basically what this, I envision this is kind of like a countywide study like we did with Warsaw.
right, exactly. Yep,
So I will send you all the information I have today. And we're just kind of waiting for you guys to decide what you're gonna do and then put our money in this and get the thing going.
yeah. Well, this is definitely the next stage. Is telling us where we can build. And Chinworth. Chinworth is a different funding source, so.
And that's true for their intersection.
Yeah, so, I'll see if I can figure out who that is. Like I said, I haven't even seen a news release. They hired somebody at this point. Maybe I missed it.
They have someone on staff.
Okay,
Who's slated to retire. But the gal before that, Megan, I don't remember her last name. She actually did get and put together the project for Syracuse and then shortly after they were awarded $1 million or something, quite a bit. She went full wing, so she ends up full wing.
right,
And she would have a lot of good stuff too.
okay. Well, anything
All
else?
kinds of resources here.
Anything else for the formal business for today?
I think it's two things for mine. Just a reminder that we want to be setting up our discussions with the council and commissioners and other stakeholders, I think fairly shortly, because August 1st, I think, is our presentation date for Rob and I are planning to present for the help grants and all the other initials that go with that. And then kind of the sub point on that is I'll work with you, Rob, to start creating those presentations.
Okay, yep.
And we'll share those with the board. I'll put them into the files once they're complete too.
Okay, great.
Well, with that, our next meeting's on the